Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin.
The older I get, the more I realize that nothing good happens in the kind of places where the GPS signal blinks out and the road hum is the only sound left. I used to think that being alone in the middle of nowhere just meant quiet. Now I know there's a different kind of quiet. The kind that feels like someone else is listening, even if you don't see them. That night on the highway proved it. I was on assignment for an environmental survey, heading through a stretch of desert so empty it didn't even have a name on the map. It was around 11 p.m. and the sky looked too big, like it was pressing down on the car roof. My gas light had been blinking for a while, so I took the first exit I saw, a dirt road that led to a small, single-pump gas station I swear hadn't been there the last time I'd been through. The place looked half alive. One buzzing light, a cracked parking lot, radio static whispering through the open window. Still, I told myself it was fine. Just get gas and keep going. I had a personal rule. Working alone in remote places teaches you a few, and mine was simple. Never go inside anywhere after dark. Pay at the pump, stay in the car, leave before anyone can bother you. So I swiped my card, typed my zip code, and waited. Transaction canceled. See cashier. I frowned. Tried again. Transaction canceled. See cashier. That's when I actually looked at the building. The windows were shattered and boarded over. The front door hung crooked. The inside was dark except for a faint orange glow from somewhere deep in the hallway behind the counter. No cars, no workers, no sign the station had been open for years. So why was the pump powered? I leaned a little closer toward the store, just squinting past the dark. Someone moved. A head, a shoulder, peering at me through a gap in the boards. When our eyes met, the person jerked back like I'd caught them doing something they weren't supposed to, which I guess I had. The pump clicked again, asking me to go inside. Absolutely not. My hands were shaking a little as I got back in the car. I told myself I was being dramatic. Maybe someone was squatting there. Maybe the pump was glitching. Rational explanations, all very neat and tidy. But the second I put the car in reverse, I saw something else. A shape at the edge of the lot. A person, standing just outside the reach of the flickering light. They weren't moving, weren't waving, weren't doing anything except watching me. I turned the wheel and drove off. My car said I had 20 miles of gas left. The next station was 30 miles away. I don't know how I made it, but I did. The real story starts on the way back. A week later, after finishing the survey miles deeper into the desert, I started home. It was close to midnight and I was exhausted, that heavy, bone-deep tired where the shadows seemed to stretch further than they should. My route took me through a narrow road that cut along a patch of scrubby woods. Nothing out there but dirt, trees, and the occasional rusted fence. About a mile from home, something burst out of the dark. A woman, stumbling, barefoot, completely soaked in blood. She landed right in front of my car, screaming. I swerved so hard the tires screamed. My hands were still locked on the wheel when she ran to my door, slamming her palms against the window. "Please," she mouthed. "Please, he's coming!" I froze, mentally, not physically, trying to make sense of her. The blood didn't look like an accident. It looked like bruises were forming under it, dirty fingerprints around her neck, her hair matted to one side like she'd been dragged. She kept looking back toward the trees. I couldn't hear anything out there, but the way she stared made my stomach tighten. I finally unlocked the door. She climbed in so fast she nearly tripped over the dashboard. I started driving before she even shut the door. "What happened?" I asked. She didn't answer, not fully. Just, "My boyfriend. He's still back there." Every mile I drove, she kept checking the back window. At one point, she ducked down, whispering, "Don't slow down," over and over. We reached the small hospital 30 minutes away. I parked by the ER doors and helped her inside. As soon as a nurse spotted her, everything turned frantic. People ran, someone yelled for a trauma cart, someone else asked me if I'd seen the attacker. I told them the truth. No, I didn't look back. Police arrived, took our statements, and told me I was smart not to wait on the roadside. They said predators in rural areas often use lures or panic traps to make drivers stop. But here's what still bothers me. As the EMTs rolled her away, she grabbed my wrist, tight enough that her nails dug into my skin. "He wasn't alone," she whispered. "There were others. They followed us. They were hiding." My chest went cold. Because the way she said it, the shaking in her voice, it wasn't panic. It was memory. And it hit me. A week earlier, an abandoned station. Someone inside manipulating the pump. Someone standing in the shadows. Someone watching from the boards. Not one person. Not a squatter. Not a fluke. A group. A pattern. A trap I almost walked into. Driving home from the hospital, I passed the stretch of road where I'd found her. Police lights flickered between the trees, but something about the scene bothered me. Too many officers with flashlights looking around, not just for one man, but for more. They were searching the woods like they expected a whole group to be in there. Something brushed against the edge of my headlights, maybe a branch, maybe not, but I didn't slow down. I haven't taken that road since, and I never stop at lonely gas stations anymore. Not even during the day, especially not if the pump tells me to go inside. Because someone out there wants people to step into abandoned buildings, and the worst part? They know how to wait. I don't know what it is about forests at dawn, but they always trick you into thinking the world is harmless. Everything looks washed out and gentle in that pale light. The leaves, the dirt, even the parts of the woods that should feel dangerous. Back then, I really believed that. I thought the woods were just woods. I didn't realize some things get left out there on purpose, things that don't want anyone finding them twice. This happened when I was 16, and sometimes I swear I can still feel the rough bark under my palms. We'd been hyping up the hike for days, me, Jonah, and Caleb, 3 idiots trying to prove we weren't scared of anything. The plan was simple. Go back to that weird treehouse Jonah spotted last week, the one perched way up in a giant oak like someone got halfway through building a hideout and then abandoned it. "It's probably some doomsday prepper's bunker," Caleb kept saying. "More like a squirrel palace," I joked. Jonah elbowed me. Or cursed. Don't forget cursed. We laughed too loud, the way you do when the fear is small but real, lingering at the edges. We headed out before sunrise, breath fogging in the cold. We weren't exactly prepared, just a coil of rope Jonah stole from his dad's garage, 3 pocket knives we barely knew how to use, and a few squished turkey sandwiches in a grocery bag. Still, we were buzzing with excitement, practically vibrating with it. It took forever to figure out how to climb. We didn't build a real rope ladder, none of us knew how, so we just looped the rope around a low branch and used knots Jonah tied as footholds. It was stupid and unsafe and exhausting, but eventually we got high enough to haul ourselves onto the small deck. The sunrise was just starting to bleed through the branches. Everything looked orange and soft and unreal. The treehouse door was shut. No lock, just this warped wooden flap with old hinges that squealed when you touched them. We did rock, paper, scissors because none of us wanted to admit we didn't want to go first. Jonah lost. He pushed the door open, stepped inside, and came back out almost instantly. His pupils were huge, his face ghost pale. "We need to go. Right now," he whispered. Caleb laughed, but it came out thin. "Bro, what? A raccoon?" Jonah didn't answer. He just climbed back onto the tree's branch like he wanted distance from the door more than anything. I should have left it alone, but curiosity is a sickness at that age. So I ducked inside. The place was small, maybe 8 feet across, with slanted walls. Dust drifted through a slash of sunlight coming from a gap in the boards. For a second, it looked empty. Then my eyes adjusted. Every wall, every inch was covered in carvings, symbols, shapes, scratches that looked almost like stick figures, but wrong, stretched, twisted. Some had little marks near them, like tally marks etched deep into the wood. And in the back corner, barely visible unless you stepped all the way inside, was a pile of toys. Kids' toys. Old ones. Dirty plastic dinosaurs, a broken wind-up car, a stuffed bear with half its face torn off. All arranged in this neat circle, like someone had been sitting there playing with them. My throat tightened. The air felt stale, like breath that had been trapped in the room too long. I stepped back toward the door, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Fast ones. From below. "Guys?" I whispered, but my voice barely made a sound. I pressed myself to the crack between two boards and peeked out. Someone was moving through the trees toward us. Not walking, weaving, like they weren't following a path, just drifting between trunks with this strange, jerky rhythm. Every few steps they stopped and tilted their head like listening for something. I whispered, "Someone's down there." Caleb swore quietly. Jonah kept shaking his head like he already knew what was coming. The figure reached the base of the oak and stopped directly below the treehouse. They didn't look up. They just pressed one hand flat to the trunk, like they were feeling for us through the wood. I held my breath. I don't think any of us moved. The forest went dead quiet. Then, a slam. The whole tree shuddered. The platform junked beneath my feet. Jonah let out a sharp breath, and Caleb hissed, "Don't move." But the rope we'd climbed was dangling right above the figure. If we slid down now, we'd land on them. The figure below took a slow step back, then walked around the tree, circling, deliberate, careful, like they were studying it. The treehouse creaked with each of their steps. The toys in the corner vibrated against the floorboards. I kept thinking, who comes up here? Why are there toys? Why are there fresh carvings? We waited until the figure disappeared behind the far side of the trunk. Then, Jonah mouthed, "Go." Caleb went first, climbing so fast he almost slipped. Jonah followed. I went last, practically sliding more than climbing, hands burning from the rope. When my boots hit the dirt, the figure was gone. Just gone. We didn't talk. We didn't look around. We just ran. Hard, branches tearing at our clothes, the trail blurring past us. I kept expecting to hear footsteps behind us, that sharp, fast rhythm. But there was nothing. I should probably start by saying I'm not the type who scares easily. When your job involves hiking through forgotten patches of land in the middle of nowhere, you learn to get comfortable with silence. Real silence. Not quiet, not solitude. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums like water pressure, as if the world itself is holding its breath. I work in environmental field surveying, soil sampling, water quality checks, habitat mapping, anything that requires trudging through woods or scrubland where no one's bothered to set foot in years. Most days it's boring in the peaceful kind of way. But there are places where the quiet feels different, too heavy, like something is listening. This is where it gets unsettling. Last spring, I was sent to assess a stretch of land that locals referred to only as the cut-through. It wasn't on any public map, just a thin access road branching off the highway and disappearing into a patch of forest that always looked dim, no matter the time of day. Even the sunlight seemed to avoid it. I parked my truck beside the overgrown signpost, grabbed my gear, and started down the narrow dirt trail. The trees arched overhead in a way that made the whole path look like I was walking into a tunnel built by the woods themselves. Moss covered everything. Even the air tasted green, damp, metallic, slightly sour like water left sitting too long in an old hose. About 40 minutes in, I caught a flicker of color through the trees. Faded blue. Fabric? Plastic? I pushed through a thicket of shrubs and nearly tripped over a long collapsed pile of firewood, half absorbed into the ground. And that's when I saw it. A campsite. A whole campsite. A tent slouched to one side like a drunk trying to stay upright, a sleeping bag wadded inside, still zipped halfway, a pillow collapsed into the dirt, tin cups hanging from a rope like wind chimes that no wind touched, even a small cookpot blackened on the bottom, even a pair of boots sitting neatly beside the tent entrance. No footprints, no drag marks, no signs of animals tearing anything apart, and everything looked as if someone had just stepped away from it, not abandoned it years ago. But the plastic on the gear was sun-bleached, the ropes cracked. People don't just walk away from their entire life like that, not without a reason, and not without taking their boots. I stood there longer than I should have. My brain felt like it was waiting to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. The woods had that stillness again, too still. Not a single insect buzzed, no leaves rustled, no birds. I tried to shake it off and forced myself to do the standard documentation, photos, measurements, location notes, but that heaviness kept climbing my spine like cold fingers. And that's when I heard it. A faint thud, then another, rhythmic, soft, like someone lightly knocking on wood. I turned toward the sound, the hairs on my arms prickling. It was coming from the trees to my right, maybe 30 feet out. The shadows there looked wrong, like they were bending around something I couldn't see. "Hello?" I called, instantly regretting it. The knocking stopped. Silence swallowed the space again. Too fast. Too complete. My pulse thudded in my ears. I packed up my equipment faster than was professional and started back toward the trail. And that's when I found the second thing. Fresh tire tracks cutting across the old dirt path. Deep. Heavy. Maybe an hour old. I should have seen them on my way in. I didn't, which meant someone or several someones had arrived while I was down at the campsite. A single thought pressed into my skull. I'm not alone out here. As I followed the tracks, each step felt louder than the last. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. The tracks curved deeper into the cut-through instead of leading out. That didn't make sense. This wasn't a place people visited casually. At the bottom of a shallow ravine, I spotted something lying across the path. A body, face down, motionless. My lungs locked. The figure wore dusty jeans and a brown jacket. No movement, no rise of breath. I froze, every instinct in me screaming to back away. But then, the body twitched. Barely, like a muscle spasm. I didn't move. I didn't speak. And that's when the loophole begins, the moment I still replay in my head like a broken recording. The man on the ground lifted his hand, palm up, weakly, almost like a child asking to be helped to their feet, like he wanted me to come closer. But something was wrong with his arm. The angle was off, too stiff, too controlled, like he wasn't moving it himself. And then I heard a sound from the ditch beside the path, a sharp inhale. Not from the man lying there, from someone else. I took one step back, and the woods broke open. From the corner of my eye, movement rippled along the ravine. Not animals, not shadows. People. 6 or 7 men pushed themselves upright from the ditch like they'd been lying flat in the mud waiting for someone to come along. Their clothes were smeared with dirt, sleeves torn, jackets hanging open like they'd slept in them for days. Hats pulled low, hoods tightened, no faces visible. None of them said a word. They didn't rush me, they didn't even walk fast. They just rose in this slow, deliberate way that made my stomach turn, every one of them facing my direction. The guy on the ground, the injured one, he rolled onto his knees in one quick, practiced motion, bracing his hands like he was getting ready to sprint or lunge. Not dazed, not hurt at all, just waiting for a reaction. That was enough. I backed up once and then bolted. Branches smacked across my arms as I crashed through the undergrowth. My boots slipped on wet pine needles, breath rasping loud in my ears. I could hear them behind me. First, the crunch of leaves, then the thud of feet picking up speed. Then, nothing. The footsteps just stopped. That silence hit harder than any sound could. It meant they weren't chasing anymore. They didn't need to chase. I didn't look back. By the time the trees thinned and my truck came into view, my legs were shaking so badly I fumbled the keys twice before getting the door open. The forest stood there behind me like nothing had been disturbed at all. Calm, ordinary, harmless. But the tire tracks I'd followed into the woods earlier, they weren't there anymore. The ground looked untouched, like no one had driven or walked through at all. I wasn't about to stick around figuring out why. I drove until the forest shrank into a thin, dark line in my rearview mirror, until pavement and sunlight felt like safety again. When I submitted my report, I labeled it as inconclusive environmental disturbance, the only way to say something's wrong out there without being forced to explain it. Nobody questioned it.